is a very important and interesting one which we often use in daily life. Okay, and it is called network address translation, NAT. Here also, I regret that because of this technical difficulty, I am not able to draw and explain to you, which would have been better. But let me, as best as I can, let me try to explain what it is. So you see again, this network address translation, this comes into picture in the context of lack of adequate number of public IP addresses, right? So public IP addresses basically are less. So that's why every organization basically they have not all organizations, but many times actually not all computers of an organization are connected to the public address, public IP. It doesn't have public IP. So for example, IIT Kharagpur. IIT Kharagpur doesn't have, to the outside world, basically, IIT Kharagpur has a couple of public IP addresses, 1, 2, 3 IP, few IP addresses. And what it does is it manages with those IP addresses, and within the organization, within IIT Kharagpur, it gives different IP addresses which are private to IIT Kharagpur. What does it mean? Again, let me give you an analogy. Let us say that in IIT Kharagpur, we have different departments. Computer science department has room numbers, let us say 101, 102, etc. Then 201, 202, 203, 301, 302, 303. These are the different room numbers, let us say. I'm just trying to give you an analogy. Now go to another department, let us say civil engineering department. They also have the similar kind of room numbers. So 301, 101, 102, etc. 201, 202, 203, 301, 302, 303, like that. They also have. Now you see that so the same numbers, same room number, I can reuse across different departments. Doesn't matter. But within the same department, let us say within IIT, within computer science department, I should not have two rooms with the room number 101. Within civil engineering department, I should not have two rooms with the room number 301. But outside, basically, to the outside world, I can repeat these room numbers, right? Because associated with that will be the tag, like it's a civil engineering department, it's a computer science department. So what I am doing, I am reusing the numbers that I can use, reusing the room numbers. I am using them. So same concept applies to IP addresses also. To the outside world, to somebody in US, let us say, it hardly matters whether the computer that I am connecting in IIT Kharagpur to in the computer science department, so they do not really need to know what is the IP address. It doesn't have to have a public IP address. It can simply have a private an address which is private to computer science department. Understood? Now this is well and good conceptually, but there has to be some entity which needs to know that what is the public IP corresponding to a particular private IP and vice versa. So this particular entity is called the NAT router. In other words, look at this particular figure over here. I hope that my screen is visible to you. So look at this particular figure. Let us say that this is your external internet and this is your IIT Kharagpur. You have different hosts, or this could be different subnets or whatever be it, and these are the corresponding IDs. Right. Now you see that these private IP addresses would be sufficient to be dealt with within IIT Kharagpur. And exactly the same thing you can repeat in another organization. Let us say IIT Kanpur also, you can have another one computer which has the IP address 172.18.3.1. Doesn't matter. But globally, if you are talking about, basically, if you are talking about an IP address, a public IP address, it has to be unique globally. But within the organization, you can repeat. So you see that some mapping is required between this public IP address and this private IP address. Now, before I proceed further, let me explain one more concept to you. You might note down. I was about to write, but I am not able to now. Please write down whatever I dictate. So now, private IP addresses in the classful category, you can have 4 blocks of private addresses, which are basically repeated within different organizations. One block is 10.0.0.0 to 10.255.255.255. This is one block of private addresses that organizations use. Some organizations use another block of private IP addresses 172.16.0.0 to 172.31.255.255. And another third block of private IP addresses is 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.255.255. So each of these, the first block has 2 to the power 24 addresses. The second block, if you do a bit of calculation, you will see that it has 2 to the power 20 addresses. And the third block basically has 2 to the power 16 addresses. So you see that IIT Kharagpur, if you look at the IP address that, if you are situated now within Kharagpur, inside the campus, you will find that the IP address that is showing is your 10 dot something address, which is a private address. Now, this private address, if you are sending a packet which will go to San Francisco, then outside basically this 10 dot something they will not understand. So that conversion has to be done. Who is going to do the conversion? This NAT router is going to do the conversion. So this private address in the NAT router, it has 2 interfaces. One is the private interface, the other one is the public interface. So NAT router basically does this mapping. Now, so the question is that when a particular packet from one of the private hosts is sent to this particular interface, so what is going to happen? It is, so the NAT router has, so let us say that you have a packet which goes like this. This is the source, and so it comes to over here in the NAT router. The NAT router basically changes this source to the public source. Now the question is that how does the NAT router know that 172.18.3.1 and it has to be mapped to this particular thing? No, sorry. So basically how the source basically is mapped. Now the question is that, this is one question. The second question is that, so let us say that you are getting one packet which is coming to this particular destination 172.18.3.1. So it comes as 200.24.5.8, which corresponds to this particular router, which is basically kind of representing IIT Kharagpur. So it comes over here, and then this router, it knows that this one should be converted to 172.18.3.1 as the private address, and it sends. Now the question is that, so how does this router know? So while going basically, the router, it is simple basically. The router, what it will do is it will replace the source with, so whatever be the source inside private address, it is going to replace it with the public IP address like this. But while coming basically, how does it know that this one basically corresponds to this one? So it looks at the cache, the table that it had built up while the packets were going, right? So from that table, basically it knows that the response that is coming from this particular destination has to be sent to the private IP address, this one. because it had kept a copy of it while it was sent out through this net router. So this is the process that is explained over here. Please look at this table, the translation table, and whatever concept I just told you, it is explained over here. In case you have any difficulty in understanding, ask me later on. And one last concept basically, so nowadays these translation tables simply do not have just the private and the universal addresses, but also it has the port numbers, the corresponding port numbers. So that basically, what it facilitates, it has number of benefits. One of the benefits that it has is that multiple applications basically you can run at the same time, and this translation can be done, and the support can be made by adding the port number also to the private address. Okay, private and the public address basically. Okay, so what it means is private address this with private port this, okay, will be mapped to the external address, that means public address this one with external port 80. So this is the private port. You see the private port numbers are peculiar, and these are the well-known external ports corresponding to the application that is running. So if we are talking about TCP, basically these are the external ports which are already well known for TCP. Okay, so that's the whole concept. So please go through, and whatever I have explained, basically, please go through these examples that have been given for you, and that way you will be able to understand this particular concept. If you have any doubt, please do not hesitate to ask me. If you need any, for not only these lectures, for any lecture, if you need